You're listening to China Africa Talk.
Jambo, ni Bridget akikuletea kipindi kinachohusiana na China na Afrika.
Vous écoutez le dialogue sino-africain avec Bridget.
Everything China, everything Africa.
Olá, você está ouvindo China Africa Talk com Bridget.
سيداتي وسادتي مرحبا بكم في الحوار الصيني العربي مع بريدجيت.
Chinese foreign ministers have long upheld the tradition of making Africa their first overseas destination at the start of each year. This year marks the 36th consecutive year of that practice. It is also a tradition of our program China Africa Talk to take a closer look at these annual visits. This week, we focus on Foreign Minister Wang Yi's Africa tour. Diplomats and scholars say the visit has reaffirmed China's commitment to deepening strategic trust with African countries and to working together to uphold multilateralism at a time of growing global uncertainty.
In an international environment marked by rising unilateralism, it is increasingly important for China, Africa, and the global south to uphold multilateralism.
It conveys that China-Africa relations are treated as a long-term strategic priority with continuity and planning.
With 2026 marking the start of China's 15th five-year plan and the 70th anniversary of China-Africa diplomatic relations, what is the broader significance of this visit and what lies ahead for this long-standing partnership? For more on this, I'm now joined by Mapaballo Mile, Lesotho's ambassador to China, and Wang Jinjie, research assistant professor at Peking University's National School of Development and the Institute of South-to-South Cooperation and Development. Ladies, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Bridget, for having us.
Thank you very much, Bridget, for having us on the talk.
We'll try to analyze this discussion country by country as per Chinese Foreign Minister's 2026 Africa tour. I'll begin there with you, Professor Wang. Chinese Foreign Minister's annual tradition of starting the new year with a visit to Africa has become one of the most enduring features of China's foreign policy. Could you share your thoughts on the tradition and the countries Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi visited this year?
Yes, Bridget. I think it's definitely a very hot issue in African countries and also in China. This tradition has become one of the clearest or most consistent signals in China's diplomacy. When our foreign minister starts the year with Africa, it's a year after year for 36 years, it conveys that China-Africa relations are not temporary or transactional. They are treated as a long-term strategic priority with continuity and planning. So this year's itinerary also sends a very deliberate message. It combined engagement with the African Union at the continental level, attention to the Horn of Africa, where peace and sovereignty issues remain sensitive, and a strong focus on East Africa's development and a connectivity agenda. So, in other words, it is not only about bilateral friendship, it is also about supporting Africa's regional integration, stability, and modernization priorities. Yes.
Now, I'm going to ask this question to both of you, but I'll begin there with you, Ambassador Mile. At his first stop, Wang Yi met with Mohammed Ali Yusuf, the chairperson of the African Union, and they attended the opening ceremony of the 2026 China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges. What is the broader significance of launching the China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges at this moment, and how does it deepen mutual understanding and cooperation between the two sides?
Thank you very much, Bridget. I'd like to appreciate the background that Professor has provided. For this year, actually last year, when I visited MFA and I was informed about this visit, I was very excited.
Right.
I was informed by the Director General that the Minister of Foreign Affairs was visiting Lesotho 21 years after the last minister was there. And I felt very honored that this happened just as I had arrived here in Beijing. So for me, the significance of launching the 2026 China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges marks an important new phase in China-Africa relations. It elevates cooperation beyond government-to-government engagement to include cultural exchange, education, tourism, youth engagement, media cooperation, and community-level partnership. You may be privy of the fact that in Southern Africa, particularly in my country, in Lesotho,
Right.
we are highly burdened by youth unemployment. So our government is now focused on economic diplomacy, and what a time that our government has partnered with China, an economic giant that the whole world is looking up to. So the initiative deepens mutual understanding, it strengthens public trust, and builds a durable social foundation for long-term cooperation between the two continents, China and Africa. At a time of global uncertainty, such people-centered diplomacy reinforces solidarity, respect for diversity, and shared development. And we are actually looking forward to seeing a lot of movement between the two continents, specifically between the two countries, where we will have people moving from this side to my country, to Lesotho. And I had discussions with Ambassador Yang, who is based in Lesotho, before I left the country.
All right.
And we will have a lot of movement coming from that side, Southern Africa, to come here, not only for skills exchange, but to share cultures. And we are actually excited because we are currently working towards having Mosheshe's Day celebrations. And that is a platform that will help us to showcase our cultural heritage as a people.
Right.
And also learn about the diversity that we have in this country.
I'd like to also know your thoughts there, Professor Wang. What is the broader significance of launching the China-Africa Year of People-to-People Exchanges?
Yes, just as Ambassador mentioned, that timing is very important.
Right.
Yeah, as China and Africa enter a new stage of cooperation, and as the international environment becomes more uncertain, during this very critical moment, people-to-people understanding, people-to-people ties become even more valuable, maybe than economic and trade sort of cooperation. So when we're understanding each other, they are the deep foundations, right? That's kind of a foundations, and a friendship can stabilize state relationships. So building the trust, building the understanding, all needs the connection between people to people. Nowadays, we see AI is everywhere. We utilize it as a tool. We're sitting in front of the computer. We can access information from all over the world. That lack of people-to-people, face-to-face understanding sometimes will causing a lot of issues, especially to this cross-states bilateral, multilateral exchanges. So these kind of people-to-people exchanges become never as this important. That's why I say the timing is really important. And it keeps cooperation resilient even when external conditions changes. And it elevates the initiative from a bilateral activity to a pan-African, as what Ambassador just mentioned, a pan-African institutionally anchored agenda. So this can build a real social connectivity.
Right.
We value too much about economic connectivity, but now this kind of social connectivity between youth, university like us, and also our university and our school is ranking #1 think tank in China. So all these kind of connections with the local communities will definitely make the cooperation be supported by the mutual agreements, by genuine mutual understanding and trust.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to say, the uniqueness of this people-centered diplomacy is the fact that we are talking beyond government to government, beyond business to business.
Right.
It's a broader context and actually gives it a human face so that everybody up to community roots level can really feel the reality and the actual partnership, so that my grandmother in the village, somewhere in rural Lesotho, knows there is a country called China, knows that they have seen people, knows the good and the strengths of each country. I think it would be appreciated on a wider scope than we have seen before. I think that is what is unique about this year, and we are excitedly looking forward to actually seeing it unfold.
Foreign Minister Wang Yi made a stop in Ethiopia. China was Ethiopia's leading source of foreign direct investment in 2025, and the country has become a major hub for Chinese enterprises in Africa. Now, during his visit, what concrete outcomes or agreements were achieved between China and Ethiopia, and how do they reflect the evolving depth of bilateral economic cooperation? Professor Wang.
Thank you, Bridget, for giving me this chance to talk about Ethiopia. Ethiopia has long been a partner with China in multiple areas. All these cooperation outcomes in Ethiopia reflects a clear direction with cooperation is moving from projects to a more integrated, forward-looking partnership. I think we tried to build up this economic partnership, but it used to be just a projects-based, but moving towards a new stage of cooperation. Traditional areas like trade, industry, I used to visit Ethiopia multiple times to understand the industry park cooperation between China and Africa. So those infrastructures, they all remain important. Transportations, they all remain important. But what stood out this time is the emphasis on upgrading, upgrading in digital economy, e-commerce, AI, and green energy, especially in 2024, when Ethiopia started to ban the fueled car imports. So there are more and more electronic cars imported from China to Ethiopia. So green energy were very much highlighted as an emerging growth area. So the message is that China-Ethiopia economic ties are deepening in both quality and also more variety areas. So Ethiopia remains a hub because Ethiopia Airline, a connection hub between China and the rest of the African countries. Right. So it is a major hub for Chinese enterprises in Africa. So that's why Ethiopia is very important to China, because this operation is increasingly about building capabilities. So that's going to be rather than just simply expanding volumes. So we see that capacity building, upgrading of the industry, which we will, as researchers and scholars, going to follow this development and trends.
Professor Wang, Tanzania was another key stop on Foreign Minister Wang Yi's itinerary. What role has China-Tanzania cooperation played in advancing regional connectivity in East Africa, particularly under the Belt and Road Initiative?
Okay, yes. So I'm glad that you brought the Tanzania, the country, here with us. So Tanzania, we always call it as a classic example.
Okay.
Classic example means where China and Africa cooperation connects directly to regional integration. So we take it as a typical example. Historically, the Tazara Railway symbolized development-oriented connectivity. Now, today, we just revitalizing and upgrading that corridor connecting Tanzania, Zambia, the Tazara. It's not only a bilateral issue, it supports a wider regional logistics, trade flows, and the industrial cluster across East Africa. So it's very meaningful. So it has a very important geographic hub. It's different from Ethiopia, but in the regional connectivity, Tanzania is important. So as you say, under the Belt and Road framework, the logic is very straightforward. Better rail and transportation corridors reduce transaction costs, expand the market access, and create more jobs, and also can help the industry development along the rails. So for East Africa, that means stronger connectivity between the ports, especially for those inland production areas. So we are very looking forward to see how it's going to engage with the local development.
Ambassador Mile, Lesotho has been among the countries most affected by recent U.S. tariff measures, placing pressure on its manufacturing sector. How would you describe the current state of Lesotho's manufacturing industry, and how timely and important was Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit against this economic backdrop?
Thank you so much. Talk about uncertain times, living in uncertain times. Right. That is a time of grace. So for Lesotho's manufacturing sector, there have been a lot of significant challenges due to recent external trade pressure, particularly, as you well cited, the new U.S. tariffs measures that have been imposed. These have caused significant disruptions in exports and employment, not only in manufacturing sector, but beyond, as the health sector was also hugely supported by the US government. These challenges have then made economic diversification, market access, and investment promotion more urgent than ever. So hence why it is very important that we received this visit from the minister, which is both timely and strategic, as it provides an opportunity to strengthen economic cooperation, to expand investment in productive sectors, to support our industrial upgrading and deepen trade ties with China, contributing to Lesotho's resilience and long-term growth. So we are anticipating to see change not only in manufacturing, but in other sectors. As I will highlight later, that we have support beyond manufacturing that has been ongoing. For even that days back as 50 years ago, we are hoping to see sustainability in the efforts that have been initiated in the past. And this brings a breath of fresh air that we received this visit. We are hoping that new doors would open, especially with the zero tariff that has just been introduced through FOCAC by the president here. We are hoping to see good things in years ahead.
Ambassador Mile, China has supported several landmark infrastructure projects in Lesotho, some that you've also just mentioned there, including the National Library, the Mantabiseng Convention Center, the Parliament Building, the Mafeteng Solar Power Plant. During his visit, what new progress or achievements were made in China-Lesotho cooperation?
Yes. During this visit, we have had significant progress in other sectors as well. We have had advances in cooperation in renewable energy and climate resilient infrastructure. We have seen strengthened technical support for industrial parks, transport and digital connectivity, and also expansion in collaboration in various sectors in capacity building and sustainable development planning. We have also seen increased support in healthcare. For instance, there is a new hospital, Maseru District Hospital, to serve the population in Maseru, which is the biggest population amongst all the 10 districts of Lesotho. And recently, before I left, I learned that there was a plan in the pipeline to construct an IC unit to that hospital. The same hospital every year since it launched in 2024 receives a team of healthcare professionals, particularly different expertise through the doctors in various fields. So this is something that has really shaped the cause of healthcare in my country, in Lesotho. You know, as a country with a single neighbor, Republic of South Africa, our quaternary healthcare is in South Africa. Quaternary meaning the highest level of care. So for diseases, especially for non-communicable diseases such as cancer, which we are seeing increasing rates of, we usually refer our patients to the Republic of South Africa. And the cost on our government is very strenuous, as it has been estimated that to complete a treatment care, one patient costs over 300,000 LSL Malud, which I believe in US dollars, it can be something like perhaps 40-something USD.
Wow.
You can imagine an economy that is already under strain. If on healthcare alone, that is the cost that the national budget has to endure. Just imagine what budget will be left for development in other sectors. So this support that we are receiving is making significant impact on our health indicators, particularly for timely referral. We will now have our own cancer facility constructed. And I had discussions again before I left the country with the ambassador to put up a proposal to see if China could add more for our cancer treatment facility. So truly, we are seeing good things. And this visit has been more than timely in Lesotho.
Professor Wang, during the Africa tour, Foreign Minister Wang Yi also held phone conversations with South African Minister Ronald Lamola and Somali Foreign Minister Abdisalam Dai. What key messages were conveyed in these exchanges, and what do they reveal about China's engagement with major regional partners in peace and security issues in Africa?
When we look at Africa, the peace issue is always important for the cooperation, state-to-state cooperation. So from my observation, the call with South Africa reflects how China views major African partners. The role of South Africa, no doubt, very important. But not only as economic counterparties, but also as a strategic actor in global South cooperation, as a leading global South cooperation partner and global governance. So these messages emphasize the maintaining a high-level exchanges, strengthening those strategic trust, and also we see how can we advancing the practical cooperation while also reinforcing shared positions in fairness, multilateralism in international affairs. So to build up this shared positions between China and South Africa will influence the global South cooperation and global governance scene. So that's why South Africa is very important from my observation. Another is the call with the Somalia. It's a different story, but equally important dimension. Why? Sovereignty and security are top issues for all the African countries. Yes. So when we look at Somalia, it is very typical related to the sovereignty and security issues. As we observed, China reaffirmed in different occasions and times support for Somalia's unity and territorial integrity, and emphasize continued cooperation across development and security-related areas. And so taken together, these two calls are really important. They showed a balanced engagement approach. Really, China to South Africa, China to Somalia, they show a very balanced engagement approach. So strong partnerships with leading regional powers and active diplomacy on peace and the sovereignty sensitivity issues. So this is a very obvious two examples, state-to-state cooperation. That's my observations on this issue.
Now, I'm going to ask this question to both of you. I'll begin with you, Ambassador Mile. Recent global developments, including the situation in Venezuela, have heightened rising unilateralism, hegemony, and law of the jungle practices. Why is it increasingly important for China, Africa, and the broader global South to uphold multilateralism and defend international fairness and justice? How does China's Global Governance Initiative address these shared concerns?
Well, thank you very much, Bridget. At this stage in life or during our times, in an international environment marked by rising unilateralism, as you pointed out, geopolitical tensions, and the law of the jungle, as referred practices, it is increasingly important for China, Africa, and the global South to uphold multilateralism, international law, fairness, and justice. And China's Global Governance Initiative responds directly to these challenges by promoting respect for sovereignty and non-interference, equitable participation of developing countries in global decision-making, reform of international institutions to reflect today's realities, peaceful conflict resolution, and shared security. These visions align closely with Africa's aspirations for a more inclusive and balanced global order. Hence, recently, when I just joined last year, there was a FOCAC forum of African ambassadors where the intention was to assess how far we are with FOCAC as aligned with the Africa Agenda 2063. So I think everybody is interested in seeing peace, in seeing stability, in seeing a world that is at peace with each other. It is rather unfortunate that in 2026, we are seeing the law of the jungle rule. It's very disturbing and it's shaking all the efforts and reversing all the gains that have been made previously. But through China-Africa cooperation, we are hoping the world will see a new perspective and shift its focus.
I'd like to also know your thoughts there, Professor Wang.
Yes, definitely. It's very important as well. Another question, good question. So when we are looking at the current situation, we see many recent global developments have reminded the world, especially developing countries, how damaging unilateralism and power politics can be, right? When rules are applied selectively or when coercion replaces a negotiation, smaller and the middle countries often bear the highest costs. Disrupted trade and investment is everywhere, high risk premiums, and a weak policy space for development. We see that happening. We were surprised at the beginning, then it's one after another. It seems to become a new normal, but this is not normal. That is why multilateralism is not an abstract principle for Africa and not even for Global South. It is practical protection. So it helps preserve predictability and sovereignty, equality, and development-friendly international environment. China, as you say about China's global governance initiative, it speaks to this by saying that global governance should be more representative, rules-based, and should be anchored in the, we all agreed, shared opinions on the United Nations system.
Right.
So it emphasizes the equal participation, reflects the reality of the Global South, right, instead of the unilateral coercion. So the core idea is very simple. International rules should protect all countries, not only the strongest.
2026 marks the start of China's 15th five-year plan and the 70th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between China and Africa. Looking ahead, what are your expectations for the future evolution of this long-standing friendship, and what new opportunities do you foresee for China-Africa cooperation in the next phase? I'll begin there with you, Professor Wang.
Okay. As a China-Africa studies scholar, I'm always positive and optimistic about the future, because we were on the continent multiple times for the past 10 years, every year, multiple times of visiting. So looking forward, I expect the China-Africa relations to enter a more implementation-driven stage. We have a very good policies but the implementation-driven stage, which means the priority is turning commitments into measurable outcomes. So evaluate the outcome, like our ambassador, Her Excellency, mentioned, very good projects, but we need to follow up with that, right? I hope one day I can go to Lesotho to do the study to evaluate how the commitment transferred to the measurable outcomes. We have PhD students I'm advising right now is from Lesotho. So I read his paper. I think for scholars, we need to go to the country to see the real outcomes. So the next phase will likely feature deeper cooperation, right? For example, high quality economic. So it's not just economic cooperation, it's higher quality economic cooperation, industry upgrades, more sustainable investment, right? Not you just build, then you leave, right? People cannot maintain that. So more sustainable investment, and also develop more new growth sectors. As I mentioned about the Ethiopia, digital economy, AI empowered application, AI empowered workforce development, AI empowered education, green energy, right? Also a very strong social foundation, as we say, people-to-people cooperation, not just to stay at the policy level, but a down-to-earth implementation-driven. So overall, the future of China cooperation will not only be more projects, as I always mentioned, based on the findings from our research. It will be more capacity building for the youth, for the large group of the workforce in African continents, and connectivity. So this is going to be involved with the modernization goals on both sides.
I'd like to know your thoughts as well, Ambassador Mile. Looking ahead, what are your expectations for the future evolution of this long-standing friendship, and what new opportunities do you foresee for China-Africa cooperation in the next phase?
Oh, thank you very much, Bridget. Most of the points really Professor Wang has touched on, but perhaps I would like to just add on to see, looking ahead, we are hoping the China-Africa cooperation will deepen green development and renewable energy, the industrial sector and manufacturing, digital economy and innovation. I believe a professor talked about AI-powered economy.
Yes.
Infrastructure connectivity, like she talked about the Tazara, and also the skills development, especially for the youth empowerment. As we know that Africa is a young continent, we have many people under the age of 15. So this next phase will be defined by higher quality cooperation, stronger people-to-people links, and a shared commitment to sustained development and mutual prosperity. And I would just like to wind up by saying China-Africa cooperation is evolving from traditional assistance into a modern development partnership built on mutual benefit, trust, sustainability, and shared prosperity. And are we not all happy to be part of this new change and looking ahead for the beginning of the 15th year plan and also celebrating the 70th anniversary? Thank you very much, Bridget.
Wonderful. Thank you again there, Ambassador Mile, and Professor Wang. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and insights on this discussion.
Thank you, Bridget. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Listeners, you can subscribe to our online newsletter on CGTN or Substack to get more insights on China-Africa relations. Just search China-Africa Talk. For now, it's goodbye. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others. Post it on social media or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. See you next time.